Greetings all. This is Yuya Assaan-ANU, and I am bringing to you another Foundational Fridays experience on the Enlightenment Transformation channel. In this session, what I'll be talking about is the concept of a spirit guide as opposed to the idea of self-initiation. Okay. But before we begin our session, I would like to just cover a few pieces. If you haven't gone over to Sadulu House, definitely go over there. There's a lot of information. I reorganized the site recently so that things could be found much more easily in terms of archive shows and things like that by category. So you want to check that out at saduluhouse.com. If you haven't signed up for classes, now is the time to get in on the classes. We have phase 2 getting ready to come out in about another 30 days. So for those of you who have not begun phase 1, definitely really consider putting some time into investing into your own spiritual growth and development by doing that. All right. So what I really want to get into today is it's kind of a varied topic, and it's something I've been thinking about addressing for some time, because it's been, as with so many other things, a lot of misconception surrounding the idea of a spiritual guide or instructor and the idea of self-initiation. And before we begin, let me just kind of go through what each one means in the context of what we're speaking about today. Now, when we speak about a spirit guide, we're speaking about someone who is taking you from a point of nowhere to now here. Okay, so they're taking you from point A, as we could say, to point Z. Okay, and in your lifetime, you will have many spirit guides. Okay, but a spirit guide doesn't necessarily have to be someone from the non-earthly kingdom. A spirit guide could be could be someone physical, or it could be someone celestial, or you can have both. For instance, for many people, I am a spirit guide. I guide them through the process of developing, empowering, and enlivening their spirit nature, and of course, aligning with their soul nature. Okay, but one of the things that I also do is I act as an intercessory between their own spirit guides. Sometimes it's their ancestors, sometimes it's an animal energy, sometimes it's an astral energy. So I act as an intercessory or intermediary between those energies and the actual human identity or human person. And one of my jobs is to create introductions and to eventually remove myself as the middleman out of the picture. Okay, so that's just one aspect of what I do as a spirit guide. Of course, there's other things like readings and initiations and dream interpretations and classes, courses, so forth and so on. Even what I'm doing right now. Okay, and then on the other side, you have the concept and the idea of self-initiation. Now, let's talk about what it means to be an initiate. Now, we know, of course, in the Orisha tradition, there's many ways that one can be an initiate. A lot of times when we think about initiation, we only consider it as taking a person from one who's a worshiper or one who acknowledges and has reverence for the Orisha to one who is a awo, or priest or priestess of the Orisha. And this is not necessarily true in terms of the technical consideration of what an initiate is. An initiate, or one who has gone through an initiation, is just one who's gone through a rite of passage, one who's gone through a process. Okay, so one can become an initiate just by having a head cleaning, or one can become an initiate by receiving ilekes. One can become an initiate, by receiving the right hand of Orumila, or receiving an Orisha, or being bathed to an Orisha. There's various levels of initiation. Okay, there's not just one initiation. Even as a Babalao, there's various levels of initiation. You don't just become a Babalao and, things cap there. There's even levels to that. And in reality, initiations never end. Now, you can be initiated by a community into an order and a corpus and a body of mysteries or information, or you can initiate yourself into that body of information. Either way, it's advantageous for you to have some form of spirit guide. Okay, so now if whether that spirit guide is your Babalocha, or Ialocha, or your Madrina, or your Padrino, or your Babalao, or your Ianifa, or an Awo that you work with, or if that spirit guide is the spirit of transition and elder, or it's just an energy that works with you, or some might call a guardian spirit or a guardian angel. Either way, it's advantageous to have someone to help guide you through the astral realms. Now, this goes back into antiquity in terms of indigenous traditions, especially when you go to Kemet. Okay, you've always had one who served as an emissary through various levels. You had people who ruled over the underworld and who would take you from one place to another. They would just, bring you on the boat. This was a form of a guide. Even in our Orisha tradition, we have Eshu, who's the owner of the road, who takes us from one place to another. Even Oshun, who's the owner of the fresh waterways, or Olokun, who's the owner of all bodies of water. These all represent pathways, roads, as such. But we even have Olorun or Oya, who are energies of the wind. Okay, so that's a form of roadway as well. Now, spiritually, we also have spiritual roadways. We call those channels sometimes, or when we're dealing with even the Orisha and we're trying to get from where we're at to where they're at, sometimes we call it paths or roads or caminos. Okay, these are different places to access the Orisha at various levels of their energy matrix. Okay, so this concept of a guide or a road is very prevalent the moment you begin what we call a spirit journey. One of the reasons we call it a journey is because we acknowledge that there's movement that has to happen. Here we come into now the issue with the self-initiate. One of the challenges, and something that I've noticed over many years with the self-initiate, is knowing exactly where they're at on the road. Sometimes it takes someone who's farther ahead or farther down the road to be able to explain to you or to, draw the sketch of exactly where you're at. Sometimes we don't realize how far we've come and how much we've gained and acknowledged, which coincidentally is always a good place to be, that level of humility. But then sometimes we think we've gone further than we actually have. And we don't really see the results that we think we should see at the point that we're at. Okay, so for that, I'm gonna share a little pataki, which I think really outlines this issue, pretty well. And it's the story of involving Orunmila. Okay, and Orunmila's 8 sons, right? And of course, I'm gonna give you the shortened version. But this is also a good lesson in how we look at pataki sometimes. There's various interpretations of this particular one. Some are correct, some are not correct. I've seen, different interpretations, but I'll give you one for the purposes of what we're speaking on. So you had Orunmila, and he had these 8 sons, right? And these 8 sons went through a process where they eventually became leaders, chiefs, and rulers in their own right, right? And at a congregation, he had his 8 sons before him. And they were celebrating the annual festival of Odun Ifa. Odun Ifa, okay? And what's important, and we'll do a show on this at some point, is the names of each son. Names are very important. This is how we begin to decode our mythology. And And even our movies, always start with the names of characters. It makes things a lot easier. How people are greeted. We know in the Ifa tradition, Babalawo is greeted with Aburu, Aboye, Aboshishi, right? And there's a reason for that. You're calling forth a particular energy when you say this, and we'll get into that. And coincidentally, as we're moving forward through this story, someone asked me recently, about Ifa and why I don't speak too often in this broadcast about the sciences and the mysteries of Ifa. One of the reasons I don't is because it's not wise to go too deep into Ifa for the people who are not ready. And this is where we get into the idea of self-initiation or the spirit guide. As a spirit guide, one of the things that I have to be very careful with is my measure of responsibility with the information and the power that's been granted to me and that I've been endowed with. Okay, so I know it may seem that we're in an age where everything is wide open, but it's actually not. You just think it is. That's the illusion. We'll get into that. So I want you to keep that in mind as I tell you this story. So it's the annual festival of Odun Ifa. He has his 8 sons before him, and he's celebrating them. He's happy for them because they all had difficult or interesting situations that they were born out of, right? So each son comes before Orunmila because, of course, he's his sons. He's a king in his own right. They are also kings, but clearly lesser kings because he is Orunmila, okay, the king of kings in this situation. And the 7 of his sons come before him and they bow. And his 8th son says, I'm not bowing. He says, since when does a king bow to a king? That doesn't even make sense. He says, I have the slippers that my father has. I have the same slippers, which were important, the brass slippers. He said, I have the necklace, the beaded coral. I have the staff, just like my father has. I have the crown, just like my father has. So he's like, I have everything you have. Why would I bow to you? That doesn't even make sense. I'm a king too. So Orunmila says, okay, you know what? I got something for you. You want to get slick at the mouth? And he walks into a tree. He disappears. He leaves. And of course, his sons were pleading for him to return because, they needed his guidance. This is Orunmila. King or not, you need your divination. You need your oracle. And he said, you know what? I'm not coming back. He said, man, I'm going to leave you some tools like these Ikin, where you can divine and ask me questions, but I'm not coming back. So the message here that we're supposed to take away, this story is about indiscriminate emulation. Okay, indiscriminate emulation. When you read the story, what they're saying to you is this. Yeah, the last son was saying, I have this, I have that, I have everything you have. So I am just as great as you are. And really Orunmila was saying, okay, well, let's see how great you are, because really you have the paraphernalia of a king. And you may be that in your own right, but you're not me. You're not Orunmila just because you have the tools and the implements of Orunmila. You have my byproducts. You don't have my essence. Okay? So this is one of the problems that I find often with the self-initiate in many different spiritual systems. People who say, okay, I'm just going to watch a bunch of videos and read books and, scrounge a little information here and there. Listen to my radio broadcasts, and now I got it. I get it. I know what this whole thing is about. I'm good now. No, you're not. You're not. Can someone initiate themselves? Sure. There's various levels of initiation. So I am not debunking the idea and the concept. But it's extremely hard to go through a process of self-initiation. Extremely hard. Just because you buy a bunch of books and you read them and you understand them to a degree and you decorate your homes with the implements of a Babalawo or the implements of an Orisha priest or priestess does not make you an Orisha priest or priestess or Ifa. It does not make you that. Okay? It just means that you have the brass slippers, you have the beaded staff, you have the crown, you have the necklace of coral. But when you disrespect the essence and the source that generated the concept of even having those things, you miss out and you lose, because the essence and the source now distance itself from you. So I know so many people, so many, even with me, they study under me for a little bit, or they listen to a couple of classes, and now they think they're in the groove, right? And they start to preach and do a lot of evangelical work based on what they think they know, and they don't know much. Now, sometimes I let people know, look, you need to stop. Or for the most part, I usually just let them kind of run out of steam on their own. There's a saying that I used to always say to people: bad men move in silence. Okay? If you're really that tough, if you're really that strong, if you're really that powerful, you don't need to do all of that preaching. People will know and they will feel it, and they will flock to you because of the truth and the energy that you represent, that just comes pouring off of you, that resonates within your voice, even when you're just laughing. You don't need to tell them, well, I found this out and this, that. You know, it gets actually kind of annoying. You know, I don't know if anyone's ever been around newly recruited religious zealots, but it can be very annoying. You know, they come and knock on your door every time you see them. Is, hey, have you heard the good news? You know, you got to deal with that mess. You know, just because you found something out 3 days ago, now, you know, it's got to be profound to me. And it may not be that profound. Sometimes you need to take time to let your information marinate and to become wisdom. Okay? And wisdom is the experience of that information so that you can have an understanding, not just reading something or watching a video and then it resonates with you and you say, yep, got it. Because trust me, you ain't got it. And one of the reasons we also know is because for so many who do that, and I'm going to tell you personally, I'm not going to out anyone, but some of you guys, you know, I watch you do that. Some of you put up, you know, YouTube videos and you parrot my information and or you put up blog posts, you know, some of you have your own websites and things like that. And then you turn to me and ask me the simplest of questions. The simplest of readings you can't do for yourself. The simplest of solutions and remedies you can't figure out. But meanwhile, you're posturing yourself as an authority on spirituality because you're parroting. We have to get out of this place of emulation, and of course of indiscriminate emulation, like Arumila's son. And we have to recognize the source of where this information comes from and learn to play your role until it is your time. Play your position. Okay? So that is one of the trappings of the self-initiate. Okay? It's not really having that elder energy or someone to kind of oversee and say, wait a minute, you know what? First of all, shut up. Stop talking so much. Just, you know, hang loose for a little bit here and soak up this information before you start talking, because your tongue is a sword. You know, words are powerful, they're very powerful, and just blasting off at the mouth like a gun with no safety on it, you cause damage over concepts that you're really just sorting out in your own mind and you don't even know. Okay? So, though you've heard me a million times talk about I'm not one who's big on initiations. I'm not one who's big on And when I say initiations, I'm speaking about initiation without education. Just to say, oh, I'm a priest because I got initiated and I'm recognized in this system now. Yeah, but you don't know anything. So, who cares? Who cares that you're that? When you still can't do the simplest of things for yourself and your loved ones. Okay? So there are various ways to tap into your spirit guides. One of the shows that we did some time ago was on channeling, and we spoke about how you actually access these spirit guides. In phase 1 of the ANU learning series, spiritual training, we actually go into the first exercise. You contact your spirit guardian. I've gotten a lot of interesting responses on that ones with you guys who've been, my students who've been sharing with me your experiences with that one. And it's been so beautiful. I mean, you don't know how happy I am for you guys, to have when you have your own spiritual revelations, not just your own spiritual experiences, because an experience is not really that difficult to have. You can have an experience, when you stub your toe. You can have an experience eating ice cream. This millions of ways that you can have enjoying joyful or blissful experience. Getting on a swing set, finger painting, coloring. All of these things are activities. But when you have a true revelation of your soul, when it's revealed to you, I'm really happy for you. From the bottom of my heart, sincerely, I'm happy because you'll never be the same again. And I know you won't be. Okay? That's one of the values of a spirit guide, spirit counselor, spiritual teacher, spiritual instructor, spiritual Jegna. Okay? Now some of you did that first exercise and you were terrified because the spirit came forth and showed itself to you. You didn't know what to do. And luckily I was there to walk you through and let you know, no, it's nothing to be scared of and it's okay. It's cool. So there's value in that. Okay. There's value in the spirit guide, but in the essence and in the same vein of balance, you guys know that I'm not one who desires to be anyone's apostle or anyone's God. I don't look to be anyone's disciple, and I don't look to have disciples. Okay? So even though I speak about the value of a spiritual guide or a spiritual counselor, through life you have many spiritual guides and counselors. I tell my students all the time, don't think you're going to stay with me forever. That's not happening. You're going to learn what I have to give you, and you're going to learn it well. You're going to thoroughly learn the lessons that I give you, and you're going to be well equipped to go into anyone else's spiritual institution at that point and learn what you need to learn and learn to separate the malarkey and that which is artificial and artful from that which is genuine, bona fide, and authentic. That's one of the things and the talents that you have coming out of my system. You can go to a bimbe, a ritual, whatever, and you know what's going on. You know if this is real, and not just because you feel it or you don't feel it. You know it because your third eye or your first eye is wide open and blinking, and you're seeing that psychic reality behind things. Okay, so there's a value there, and like I said, I'm genuinely happy when you guys make contact like that, because I also know when you make contact like that, you start to grow in a way where now our conversations become more enjoyable for me. It's kind of like the Orisha. I told you before. When you grow, you transcend and you ascend your position, they have a more intelligent conversation with you, and they desire to have more intelligent conversation with you, just as I do. Sometimes I get asked the same questions over and over again, and it is a challenge to not become jaded. And luckily I am a compassionate person, so I understand when a person is genuinely confused. Now is not the time to say, again, but I do really enjoy when you guys start to kick it up a notch, and the questions and the statements become more intelligent and profound, and more importantly, more original, where you're not just taken from me or from someone else and parroting. but they're coming from your own calculations, as simplistic as they may be. And that doesn't need to be broadcasted to the world whenever you figure something out. No, you don't need to do that. Bad men move in silence. You know, most powerful people I've ever met were the most plain and ordinary looking folks. You know, even in my lecturing work, some of the biggest jobs that I've gotten, some of the biggest gigs for doing inspirational speaking, you know, or professional development have come in the most simplest of ways. You know, I may have been speaking somewhere. Someone just came up to me, gave me a card. Didn't even say much. Here, give me a call. And the card may have just been simple, you know, looked like it was, you know, like done in Microsoft Word and somebody cut it out, you know, with some left-handed scissors or something, you know. But those ended up being my biggest gigs. Those who did not profess loudly and scream, you know, but they had a pure heart of energy and progress and success. So they didn't need to do all of that. They didn't need to scream. Okay, so, you know, the idea, again, and the concept of the spirit guide is varied. There's many. And like I said, I'm one of them. And you have many of them. You have thousands of them. Every Orisha is your potential spirit guide. Okay, every ancestor is a potential spirit guide. Now, keep in mind that these are thought forms. Thoughts are not always right and exact, but they may be better than your current thoughts, because your current thoughts are much younger than, you know, your ancestral energy from 6,000 years ago, right? So these all act as your spirit guides. The self-initiation process, even if you're in a self-initiate, you still need to have some level of spirit guide. But the only challenge with self-initiation, I'll tell you, is that you have nothing and no one to test your theories with and to have that push and pull exchange. So that's always difficult. It's, you know, picture yourself being dropped on an island by yourself, which of course would be very peaceful for many of us, like myself, who like isolation. But how would you really work out some of the mysteries of life without having other beings to be able to take you through trials and tribulations sometimes, and to really bring you to a place where your soul rips open and you ask yourself critical questions? Then you learn, aha, there we go. Now I'm not parroting. I'm getting the information straight from my soul, whether it came from pain or whether it came from ecstasy. It's mine, though. At least it's mine. At least it's original. I got this. You know, that's your mission, not to come here and copy anyone else. Okay, so self-initiation versus the spirit guide. Where do I stand on that? Spirit guide, earthly or celestial, one should have guides to carry him through. And then eventually what happens is that you become the emissary or the propulsion for the guides. Okay, so even though Eshu may guide you through the astral realms initially, eventually what happens is that you now take Eshu to realms that he's not been in, because of where his matrix exists at. Okay, so it's just like I've had teachers in my past who I sat at their feet in awe, you know, eyes wide open, and, you know, sitting cross-legged and just writing notes. And then years later, we would be in my living room debating, you know, and I'd be breaking things down to them, you know, and they'd be writing notes and happy to see me at that level, just like a proud parent. Some of you guys want that to happen in a month. You know, after taking one class or listening to 2 shows. It probably is not going to happen like that. Okay, so be patient and tender with your soul. You know, don't skip over and don't assume that you have something that you don't. Okay, indiscriminate emulation of information is dangerous. Okay, get the experience for yourself. That's our show for today, but definitely make sure you check me out at SaduluHouse.com.